The moon hung low over Millbrook, a pale witness to things that happened only in darkness. Jessamine Holt moved through the empty streets like a shadow, her worn boots silent against the cobblestones. The basket on her arm was heavy tonight. Bread, cheese, and a small jar of broth she had saved from the kitchens. Not much, but enough. Always enough to keep someone alive for one more day. She had been doing this for 4 months now. Every night after the great house fell silent, after the candles were snuffed and Lord Aldrich retired to his chambers, Jessamine slipped out through the servants' entrance and walked the 2 miles to the edge of Briar's Wood. No one noticed her absence. No one ever noticed her at all. That was the advantage of being invisible. The forest pressed close as she left the road, branches catching at her cloak like fingers trying to hold her back. She knew the path by heart now. 20 paces past the fallen oak. Left at the stream. Through the clearing where wildflowers grew in summer, but now lay dormant under frost. And there, hidden among the trees like a forgotten secret, stood the cottage. It had no name, no address. It existed on no map Jessamine had ever seen. The stones were crumbling, the roof sagged in the middle, and the single window was so thick with grime that no light escaped. But someone lived inside. Jessamine knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. Their signal. The door creaked open. The woman who stood there might have been beautiful once. Now she was a whisper of a person, her silver hair tangled, her eyes clouded with confusion more often than clarity. Her dress hung loose on a frame that had forgotten what proper nourishment felt like. Tonight, though, those eyes were clear. "You came back," the woman breathed. "You always come back." "Of course I did." Jessamine stepped inside, setting the basket on the rickety table. "I brought broth tonight, still warm." The cottage smelled of damp and decay, but Jessamine had long since stopped noticing. She lit the single candle she had brought last week, and soft light filled the small space. The woman sat in the only chair, watching Jessamine prepare the food with something like wonder. "Why?" she asked. The same question she asked every night she was lucid enough to ask it. "Why do you help me?" "Because someone should." Jessamine poured the broth into a chipped bowl and brought it to her. The woman's hands trembled as she took it, but she drank deeply, color slowly returning to her hollow cheeks. "You are kind," the woman whispered, "kinder than anyone has been in years. Can you tell me your name tonight? You never remember when I ask." The woman's brow furrowed. The clarity in her eyes flickered, threatened to fade. "I was someone once, someone important." She gripped Jessamine's wrist suddenly, her fingers cold and desperate. "But he took that from me. He takes everything." "Who? Who did this to you?" The woman's gaze darted to the door, wild with fear. "He has eyes everywhere. If he discovers you have been coming here, he will kill me. He will kill us both." "Tell me who he is. I can help. I can—" But the lucidity was already draining away, replaced by the familiar vacant stare. The woman released Jessamine's wrist and returned to her broth as if the conversation had never happened. Jessamine stayed until the candle burned low, then gathered her empty basket. "I will come back tomorrow," she promised, though she did not know if the woman could hear her anymore. The walk back was always lonelier than the walk there. She was halfway to the main road when she heard them. Hoofbeats, fast, deliberate, coming directly toward her. Jessamine froze, her heart slamming against her ribs. A voice cut through the darkness like a blade. "Stop right there." Jessamine turned slowly, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. The rider emerged from the shadows like something out of a nightmare. His horse was black, its coat gleaming even in the pale moonlight. The man astride it was tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a dark coat that probably cost more than Jessamine would earn in 5 years. She could not see his face clearly, but she could feel his gaze. Heavy, assessing, dangerous. He dismounted in one fluid motion, and Jessamine instinctively stepped back. What business does a servant have on this road at midnight? His voice was deep, controlled, the kind of voice accustomed to being obeyed without question. Jessamine's eyes caught the crest embroidered on his glove. A raven over crossed swords. Raven crest. Her stomach dropped. This was the Duke, Theron Blackwood himself, Lord Aldrich's nephew, the most powerful man in 3 counties, and she was standing in front of him with an empty basket and no explanation that would not destroy everything. "I was walking, Your Grace." She kept her voice steady. "Is that a crime? At this hour?" He stepped closer. She could see his features now. Sharp jaw, dark hair, eyes that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. "With a basket? You are either a thief, a liar, or hiding something far more interesting." "I am none of those things." "Then you will not mind telling me where you have been." "Nowhere that concerns you." The words left her mouth before she could stop them. She saw his expression shift. Surprise, then something sharper. Curiosity. "You work at Harrowgate," he said. Not a question. "I have seen you there. You serve in Lord Aldrich's household." Jessamine said nothing. "What is in that cottage?" Her blood turned to ice. He knew about the cottage. How did he know? Nothing. "You are a poor liar. And you are trespassing on my solitude, Your Grace. Even dukes do not own the night." For a long moment neither of them moved. The forest held its breath around them. Then, unexpectedly, his lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "You have courage," he said. "Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless." He turned back to his horse, mounting with the same effortless grace. From the saddle he looked down at her with eyes that missed nothing. "I will discover what you are hiding, and when I do, you had better hope the secret was worth the risk." He spurred his horse forward, disappearing into the darkness as quickly as he had appeared. Jessamine stood motionless until the hoofbeats faded entirely. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. He would come back. She knew it with the certainty of someone who had learned to read danger in order to survive it. The question was not whether he would find the cottage again. The question was what he would do when he saw who was inside. The next day passed in a fog of dread. Jessamine moved through her duties at Harrowgate Manor mechanically. She polished silver that was already gleaming. She pressed linens that held no wrinkles. She did everything expected of a lady's maid who wished to remain unnoticed. But her mind was in the forest. Late in the afternoon, she passed Lord Aldrich's study and heard voices within. She slowed her steps, adjusting the stack of towels in her arms as an excuse to linger. "The Duke has been asking questions again." Lord Aldrich's voice, smooth as oil. "About his mother's death, about the circumstances." A second voice, one she did not recognize. "Does he suspect?" "He suspects nothing concrete. But he is persistent. We must keep him distracted. The Ashcroft girl serves that purpose well enough. And if she does not? Then we find another way. We always do." Footsteps approached the door. Jessamine moved quickly, disappearing around the corner before she could be seen. Her heart raced. The Duke's mother had died 15 years ago. Everyone in Millbrook knew the story. Lady Alawen Blackwood, driven mad by grief after her husband's death in a hunting accident, sent to an asylum where she perished 3 years later. It was tragedy, history, settled fact. So why was Lord Aldrich afraid of questions? That night, Jessamine approached the cottage with more caution than usual. She circled the clearing twice, watching for movement, listening for hoofbeats. Nothing. She knocked. 3 times. Pause. Twice more. The door opened. The woman looked worse tonight. Pale, trembling, her eyes darting past Jessamine into the darkness. "Someone came today," she whispered before Jessamine could speak. "A man. He did not come inside, But he watched the cottage. For hours. I could feel his eyes. Jessamyn's stomach clenched. What did he look like? I could not see clearly, but his horse was black. Black as death. The Duke. "Come inside," Jessamyn said, guiding the woman back into the cottage. "You need to eat. You need to—" A sound behind her. Jessamyn spun. He stood in the doorway, filling it with his presence. The Duke of Ravencrest, still wearing his riding clothes, his face unreadable in the candlelight. "So this is your secret," he said quietly. Jessamyn positioned herself between him and the woman. "You should not be here. And yet here I am." His gaze moved past her, finding the frail figure huddled in the corner. "Who is she?" "A woman who needed help. That is all that matters. That is not—" He stopped. Jessamyn watched the color drain from his face. She had never seen a man look so completely undone. He stepped forward, then stopped, as if his body had forgotten how to move. "That is not possible. Your Grace?" He was not listening. His eyes were fixed on the woman who had shrunk back against the wall, shaking. "Mother?" The word hung in the air like a ghost. The woman whimpered. "No, no. He sends people. He always sends people to hurt me. Please. Please, I have been good. I have stayed quiet. Mother." The Duke fell to his knees, his composure shattered completely. "It is me. It is Theron. Your son." "I have no son. My son was a boy. Just a boy. They told me he forgot me. They told me—" "I never forgot you." His voice cracked. "They told me you died. 15 years ago. They told me you were gone." The woman stared at him. Jessamyn watched something shift behind those clouded eyes. Recognition, struggling to surface through years of fog and fear. "Theron?" A whisper. A prayer. "My little boy?" "Yes." Tears streamed down his face. He made no move to hide them. "I am here. I found you." The woman reached out with trembling fingers and touched his cheek. "You grew so tall," she breathed. "So tall? Like your father?" And then she was weeping, and he was holding her, and Jessamyn stood frozen in the corner of that crumbling cottage, watching a man she had thought was made of stone completely shatter. She understood now why Lord Aldrich was afraid of questions, because the answers would destroy him. The woman fell asleep in her son's arms, exhausted by the weight of reunion. Theron laid her gently on the narrow cot, covering her with the thin blanket Jessamyn had brought weeks ago. His movements were tender, careful, completely at odds with the cold authority she had witnessed on the road. When he finally turned to face her, his eyes were red, but his voice was steady. "How did you find her?" Jessamyn hesitated. 4 months ago, I was walking back from the village after dark. I took a wrong turn, ended up deeper in the woods than intended. I heard crying. "And you investigated? Alone? At night?" "I am a servant, Your Grace. I have been alone my entire life. The dark stopped frightening me years ago." Something flickered across his face. Respect, perhaps. Or recognition. "Continue." "I found the cottage. Found her inside, starving, confused, and talking to people who were not there. I thought she was a vagrant at first. Someone abandoned by family, left to die." Jessamyn glanced at the sleeping woman. "I started bringing food, medicine when I could steal it from the house. I never knew who she was. She could rarely remember her own name. But someone has been keeping her here. Someone pays for this prison. Yes, a man comes once a week. I have seen him from a distance, but never his face." She paused. "He wears Harrowgate livery." Theron went very still. "My uncle's household." "Yes." The silence stretched between them, thick with implication. 15 years ago, Theron said slowly, my father died in a hunting accident. My mother was said to have gone mad with grief. My uncle had her committed to Ashworth Asylum for her own protection. His jaw tightened. I visited that asylum. They showed me records. They told me she died 3 years after arriving. They showed me a grave. Then someone built an elaborate lie. Someone did. His hands clenched at his sides. And I believed it. For 15 years, I mourned a woman who was alive, locked away in a rotting cottage while I attended balls and managed estates, and... His voice broke. Jessamine said nothing. There was nothing to say. After a long moment, Theron composed himself. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. You work at Harrogate. You have access to rooms, to conversations, to documents. I am a servant. I am invisible. Exactly. He stepped toward her. I need proof. Letters, records, anything that connects my uncle to this, to her imprisonment, perhaps to my father's death. You believe Lord Eldrick killed your father? I believe my uncle has been lying to me for 15 years. I believe he has kept my mother drugged and hidden while playing the role of devoted family. His eyes burned. And I believe that kind of deception does not exist without darker secrets beneath it. Jessamine's mind raced. What he was asking was dangerous. If Lord Aldrich discovered her spying, she would not simply lose her position. She would disappear, just like Lady Elowen had. If he catches me, I will protect you. Forgive me, Your Grace, but you failed to protect your own mother for 15 years. The words were cruel. She knew it even as she spoke them. But she needed to know if this man was worth trusting. Theron did not flinch, did not look away. You are right, he said quietly. I failed her because I did not know. Now I know. And I swear to you, on her life, I will burn his entire world to ashes before I let him hurt anyone else. He extended his hand. Help me, and I will ensure that neither you nor she ever has reason to fear him again. Jessamine stared at that hand, the hand of a duke, offered to a servant, an alliance that defied every rule of the world she lived in. She thought of the woman on the cot. 15 years of darkness. 15 years of being forgotten. She thought of her own years of invisibility, of being no one to anyone. Perhaps it was time to become someone. Jessamine took his hand. What do you need me to do? His grip was firm, warm, steady. Everything, he said. I need you to see everything. Within 2 days, Lady Elowen was moved. Theron arranged everything with military precision. A physician he trusted from London, a secure location on the Ravencrest estate, hidden from casual visitors, nurses who were paid well and questioned nothing. Jessamine visited once, escorted by Theron himself under cover of darkness. Lady Elowen was already improving. The fog in her eyes had begun to lift. She recognized her son now, called him by name, and held his hand while she slept. But her memories remained fractured. Pieces of a puzzle scattered across 15 years of drugged confusion. It will take time, the physician said. Whatever they gave her suppressed her mind for years. Recovery is possible, but slow. Time was something they might not have. At Harrogate, Jessamine became a different person. She still polished silver and pressed linens, still curtsied when Lord Aldrich passed, still lowered her eyes like a proper servant should. But now she watched. She noted which rooms Lord Aldrich visited and when. She memorized the names of his guests, the topics of his conversations, the letters that arrived bearing unfamiliar seals. She caught the occasional glance from Mrs. Thornley, the housekeeper, who seemed to see far more than she ever spoke aloud. She discovered that Lord Aldrich kept a locked drawer in his study. Every night before retiring, he checked it. Every morning, first thing, he checked it again. Whatever was inside mattered more than anything else in that house. She and Theron met in secret. The forest edge, always after midnight, always brief. He would emerge from the shadows on foot now, leaving his horse behind to avoid the sound of hoofbeats. Lord Aldrich had a visitor yesterday, she reported one night. A man I did not recognize. They spoke of the arrangement and securing the succession. Those are his words? Exactly? Exactly. He also mentioned your name. He said you were becoming troublesome. Theron's expression darkened. Good. Let him worry. Another night she brought different news. There is a ball being planned. At Ravencrest Hall. The autumn ball. I am aware. It happens every year. Lord Aldrich speaks of it constantly, to Lady Rowena especially. He seems excited. She paused. An excitement from that man terrifies me. Lady Rowena Ashcroft? Yes. She visits often. They discuss your marriage as if it has already been decided. My uncle has been pushing that match for years. The Ashcroft fortune would solve several of his financial difficulties. So you will not marry her? The question slipped out before Jessamine could stop it. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, grateful for the darkness. If Theron noticed, he gave no sign. I will marry no one my uncle chooses, he said simply. His judgment has proven worthless. A week later, Jessamine found something concrete. She had slipped into Lord Aldrich's study while he entertained guests, her heart pounding with every creak of the floorboards. The locked drawer defeated her, but his correspondence tray did not. A letter, half hidden beneath estate accounts. The arrangement proceeds as discussed. Thornwood's future will be secured by winter's end. Ensure the girl remains compliant. No signature, no address. But the handwriting matched other letters she had seen Lord Aldrich pen himself. She copied the words onto a scrap of fabric, tucked it into her sleeve, and returned the letter exactly as she had found it. That night she gave Theron the fabric. He read it twice, his face carved from stone. Thornwood is the old name for the Ravencrest dukedom, he said quietly, and Winter's End is 3 months away. What happens at Winter's End? I do not know. He folded the fabric carefully. But I intend to find out before it happens to me. 2 weeks after her rescue, Lady Allowen spoke clearly for the first time. Theron brought Jessamine to Ravencrest under the guise of delivering documents from Harrowgate. A thin excuse, but no one questioned a servant carrying papers. The hidden chamber was warm, comfortable, filled with soft light. Lady Allowen sat in a chair by the window, wrapped in blankets, looking out at gardens she had not seen in 15 years. When Jessamine entered, the transformation on the older woman's face was immediate. The girl, Lady Eowyn breathed. The girl who came in the darkness. She rose unsteadily, crossing the room with arms outstretched. Jessamine found herself enveloped in an embrace that smelled of lavender and tears. You fed me when I was starving, Lady Eowyn whispered. You spoke to me when everyone else had abandoned me to silence. Why? Why would you do that for a stranger? Because no one deserves to be forgotten. Lady Eowyn pulled back, studying Jessamine's face with eyes that were finally, fully clear. You have known loneliness, she said. I can see it. The same loneliness I felt in that cottage. I have, my lady. Then we understand each other. Lady Eowyn took her hands. Sit with me, both of you. I need to tell you what I remember. They sat. Mother and son and the servant girl who had bound them together. Lady Eowyn spoke slowly, carefully, as if each word cost her something. The day your father died, there was a hunting party. You remember, Theron. You were too young to join, but you begged to come. I remember. His voice was rough. You convinced father to let me stay home. Thank God I did. Her grip tightened on his hand. The party left at dawn. I was in the garden when I heard the shot. Too close. The hunting grounds were miles away, but this sound came from just beyond the tree line. She closed her eyes. I ran toward it. I do not know why. Instinct, perhaps. Fear. What did you see? Your father on the ground, blood on his chest, and Aldrich standing over him, holding the rifle. The words fell like stones into still water. He saw me, she continued. I will never forget his face. Not surprised, not frightened, just calculating, like he was solving a problem. What did he do? He smiled. He said, "This is unfortunate, Elowen. I had hoped you would be elsewhere." A tear slid down her cheek. That night, men came to my room. They held me down. A physician gave me something that made the world go soft and far away. The asylum, Theron said. I do not remember arriving. I barely remember anything after that first injection. Just flashes, different rooms, different faces. Then the cottage, and the man who brought food once a week and checked that I was still breathing. She looked at her son with devastating clarity. Aldrich murdered your father. He imprisoned me because I witnessed it. And he has been stealing your inheritance ever since. The silence that followed was absolute. Finally, Theron spoke. I will make him pay. I swear it. You cannot prove any of this. My word against his, the mad widow, versus the respected lord. Then we find other proof. Documents. Witnesses. He stood, pacing. Someone helped him. The physician. The men who took you. Someone knows the truth. After Lady Elowen fell asleep, exhausted by memory, Theron walked Jessamine to the servants' exit. They stood in the doorway, neither willing to break the silence first. Why are you doing this? He finally asked. You owe me nothing. You could walk away. When I was 12, my parents died in a fire. No one helped me. I became invisible. A ghost moving through other people's lives. She met his eyes. Your mother was a ghost for 15 years. I refuse to let that be how her story ends. His expression softened, the walls cracking just enough for her to glimpse what lay beneath. Jessamine. The first time he had used her name. Thank you. Do not thank me yet, Your Grace. The hardest part is still ahead. Theron, he said quietly. When we are alone, call me Theron. She nodded, not trusting her voice. Something had shifted between them tonight. Neither was ready to name it. 3 days before the autumn ball, Harrowgate Manor hosted a dinner. Lord Aldrich had invited a dozen of his closest allies, politicians, landowners, men who controlled money and influence in equal measure. The kind of gathering where futures were decided over brandy and cigars. Jessamine was assigned to serve. She moved through the dining room like a ghost, refilling glasses, clearing plates, never meeting anyone's eyes. The perfect servant, invisible in plain sight. But her ears missed nothing. The Duke remained stubborn about the Ashcroft match, one guest remarked. Perhaps he needs stronger motivation. Lord Aldrich smiled his oiled smile. Motivation can be arranged. By winter's end, my nephew will see the wisdom of compliance. And if he does not? Then we proceed to alternative arrangements. Lord Aldrich swirled his wine. The physician assures me his methods are undetectable. A weak heart, they will say. Tragic, but not unprecedented for a man under such pressure. Jessamine's hands trembled. She steadied them against the serving tray. They were planning to murder Theron. Poison disguised as natural death. She needed to leave, needed to warn him. You there? Girl! Lady Rowena's voice cut through the room like a blade. Jessamine turned, keeping her expression neutral. Yes, my lady. More wine. Lady Rowena held out her glass without looking at Jessamine directly. Then, as Jessamine poured, those cold eyes flickered upward. I know you. I serve at Harrowgate, my lady. You have seen me before. No, not from service. Lady Rowena tilted her head, studying Jessamine with unsettling focus. You are always nearby when important conversations happen. Always lingering where servants should not linger. I go where I am assigned, my lady. Do you? Lady Rowena's smile did not reach her eyes. How curious that your assignments always seem to place you within earshot of private matters. Lord Aldrich glanced over. Is something wrong, Lady Rowena? Nothing at all. She dismissed Jessamine with a wave. Just observing the efficiency of your staff. Jessamine retreated to the kitchen, her pulse pounding. Lady Rowena suspected her. Perhaps not the full truth, but enough to be dangerous. That night, she met Theron at the forest edge, her words tumbling out in a breathless rush. They are planning to kill you, at the ball. Poison made to look like heart failure. Theron's expression hardened to granite. You are certain? I heard Lord Aldrich say it himself, and there is more. She hesitated. Lady Rowena is watching me. She knows something is wrong. Can you last 3 more days? I do not know. She looks at me like she is solving a puzzle. Then we must act at the ball itself. Expose him before he can execute his plan. How? I am still working on that. He reached out, his hand briefly touching hers. Be careful, Jessamine. If anything happened to you. He stopped himself. But she heard what he did not say. The autumn ball at Ravencrest Hall was the event of the season. 300 guests filled the grand ballroom, their gowns and jewels glittering beneath 1,000 candles. Music swelled from the orchestra. Laughter echoed off gilded walls. Everything sparkled with wealth and privilege. Jessamine stood at the top of the marble staircase, terrified. Breathe, Theron murmured beside her. You belong here tonight. I am a servant. Tonight you are my guest, a distant cousin visiting from the north, Miss Jessamine Whitfield. He had given her a new name, a new identity, and a gown that cost more than she would earn in 10 years of service, deep emerald silk that made her eyes luminous, pearl drops at her ears, her hair swept up in an elegant style she had never imagined wearing. She barely recognized herself. Ready? Theron offered his arm. No. Good. Neither am I. They descended together. The whispers began immediately. Who is she? I have never seen her before. She arrived with the Duke himself. At the bottom of the stairs, Lord Aldrich waited with Lady Rowena on his arm. His smile was fixed, pleasant, and absolutely lethal. Nephew, he said warmly, how delightful. And who is your lovely companion? Miss Jessamine Whitfield, a cousin from my mother's side. She has been abroad for many years and wished to see Ravencrest. Your mother's side? Lord Aldrich's eyes flickered. I was not aware any of Elowen's relations remained. A distant branch, nearly forgotten. The word hung in the air. Forgotten. Jessamine saw something shift behind Lord Aldrich's pleasant mask. Lady Rowena stepped forward, her gaze sharp. Miss Whitfield, what a pleasure. She extended her hand with exaggerated grace. I do hope we shall become acquainted. I have so many questions about your family. I look forward to answering them, Lady Rowena. I am certain you do. The tension was suffocating. Jessamine forced herself to breathe. The evening proceeded in a blur of introductions and performances. Jessamine played her role as instructed. Polite, reserved, revealing nothing. She danced with elderly lords who commented on her grace. She conversed with curious ladies who probed for information she did not provide, and all the while, she watched. Lord Aldrich spoke with a man she recognized, the same man from the dinner party. They stood near the refreshment table, their heads bent in quiet conversation. She saw a servant approach Theron with a glass of wine on a silver tray. A chill ran down her spine. The servant was one she recognized from Harrowgate, one of Lord Aldrich's personal staff. Jessamine moved without thinking. She intercepted the servant, smiling graciously. Allow me, I was just about to bring the Duke a refreshment. The servant hesitated. Lord Aldrich instructed, and I am the Duke's guest. Surely that grants me some privilege. She took the tray. Thank you. That will be all. The servant retreated, looking uncertain. Jessamine carried the wine to Theron, leaning close as she handed him the glass. Do not drink this. It came from your uncle's man. Theron's fingers brushed hers as he accepted the glass. Understood. He raised it to his lips without drinking, then set it aside on a nearby table. Later, the orchestra struck up a waltz. "Dance with me," Theron said. Not a request. She took his hand. They moved together across the polished floor, surrounded by swirling gowns and watchful eyes. For a moment, the danger faded. There was only the music, and his hand at her waist, and the way he looked at her. "You are extraordinary," he said quietly. "You know that? I am a servant playing dress-up. You are the bravest person in this room. Everyone else wears masks to hide their cowardice. You wear a mask to fight." The music swelled. He pulled her closer than propriety allowed. "When this is over," he murmured, "I want you to stay. Not as a spy, not as a servant, as yourself." "Theron, you do not have to answer now. Just know that I am asking." The dance ended. Across the room, Lady Rowena watched them with murder in her eyes. The confrontation came faster than expected. Lord Aldrich noticed the untouched wine. Jessamine saw his expression flicker, the pleasant mask cracking for just a moment. He approached Theron with a fresh glass. "Nephew, you have barely touched your drink. Allow me." He pressed the glass into Theron's hand. "A toast. To family." The room quieted. Guests turned to watch. Theron studied the wine, then met his uncle's eyes. "To family," he agreed. "But I insist we exchange glasses, a sign of trust between relations." He held out the glass Lord Aldrich had given him. The silence grew unbearable. "I would never insult you by refusing," Theron continued softly. "Unless, of course, there is a reason you would not drink what you just poured for me." Lord Aldrich's smile faltered. Sweat appeared at his temple. He had two choices: refuse and confirm suspicion, or drink. He drank. Within minutes, he was pale, trembling. His hand clutched a nearby pillar for support. "Uncle?" Theron's voice carried false concern. "You look unwell." "I am fine. The heat—" "Someone fetch a physician. Lord Aldrich appears to be having difficulties." Chaos erupted. Guests crowded around. Servants rushed for help. In the confusion, Lady Rowena seized Jessamine's arm. "You!" she hissed. "I knew I recognized your face. You are the maid from Harrowgate, the one who is always watching. Release me. Not until I expose you for what you are." She raised her voice, cutting through the commotion. "This woman is an impostor. She is no cousin of the Duke. She is a servant, a spy planted in this household to spread lies." Every eye turned to Jessamine. The whispers became a roar. A servant? Pretending to be nobility? Scandalous. Theron stepped forward, his voice commanding silence. "Miss Whitfield is here at my invitation, as my intended." The room went utterly still. "Your intended?" Lady Rowena's face contorted with fury. "You were promised to me. The contracts are all but signed." "I promised nothing. My uncle made arrangements I never consented to." Lord Aldrich, still pale and sweating, staggered forward. "This is madness. The girl is a servant. She has been spying on me for months. She is part of some conspiracy." "What conspiracy, uncle?" Theron's voice turned to ice. "What exactly has she seen that concerns you so much?" The room held its breath. Perhaps she saw documents about arrangements and securing the succession. Perhaps she overheard conversations about physicians and undetectable methods. Lord Aldrich's eyes widened. "Perhaps," Theron continued, "she learned things that you have spent 15 years trying to bury." He turned to the assembled guests. "My uncle has secrets, terrible secrets, and tonight he will answer for them. You have no proof of anything. Do I not?" Theron nodded toward the entrance. The doors opened, and Lady Elawen Blackwood walked into the ballroom. Gasps echoed off the walls. "That is impossible." Lady Aloan died years ago. A ghost. Lord Aldrich went white as bone. Hello, Aldrich? Lady Elowen said, her voice steady despite her frailty. Did you miss me? The ballroom erupted. 300 guests surged forward, craning for a better view of the woman who should have been in her grave. Lady Alowen stood in the doorway, supported by the physician, wearing a simple gray gown that somehow made her look more dignified than any jeweled countess present. Her eyes found her son first. A small nod. Courage given and received. Then her gaze settled on Lord Aldrich. You look surprised, she said calmly. Did you truly believe I would stay buried forever? This is a trick. Lord Aldrich's voice cracked. An actress. A manipulation. My sister-in-law died 15 years ago. I have the death certificate forged. Like everything else you have built your life upon. Lady Elowen walked forward slowly, the crowd parting before her like water. 15 years ago, I witnessed something I was never meant to see. My husband, your brother, lying dead in the woods, and you standing over him with the rifle still smoking in your hands. The gasps that followed were sharp, horrified. She is mad, Lord Aldrich insisted. She was committed for insanity. Everyone knows this. I was committed because I knew the truth. You paid physicians to declare me unstable. You forged documents to have me transferred to a private facility. And then you locked me in a cottage at the edge of Briarswood and kept me drugged for 15 years. Lies. Delusions. Are they? Theron stepped forward, holding a sheaf of documents. I have records from Ashworth Asylum showing my mother was transferred to private care 3 years after her arrival, care that you paid for, monthly, for 15 years. He handed the papers to Lord Ashford, the magistrate who had been invited as a guest. I have letters in my uncle's handwriting discussing the arrangement and securing the succession. I have testimony from the keeper he hired to guard my mother's prison. Lord Aldrich laughed, but the sound was hollow. The word of a mad woman and a lovesick servant? No court will accept this. Then perhaps they will accept mine. A new voice. Mrs. Thornley, the Harrowgate housekeeper, stepped forward from the crowd. I have worked for Lord Aldrich for 22 years. I have seen things, heard things. The night Lady Elowen disappeared, I saw men carry her from the house. I heard Lord Aldrich give the orders. Her voice trembled but did not break. I have remained silent out of fear, but no more. Another servant stepped forward, then another. I delivered payments to the cottage. I forged signatures on Lord Aldrich's instructions. I heard him speak of the Duke's death as if it were already decided. One by one they came, the invisible people, the forgotten witnesses, all the servants who had seen too much and said nothing for too long. Lord Aldrich backed toward the door. This is a conspiracy. You have all been paid. Manipulated. The only manipulation, Theron said coldly, is the life you built on my father's grave and my mother's suffering. He nodded to the magistrate. Lord Ashford, I formally request that Lord Aldrich Blackwood be detained for the murder of my father, the false imprisonment of my mother, and conspiracy to commit my own assassination. Lord Ashford examined the documents, his face grave. The evidence appears substantial. Lord Aldrich, you will surrender yourself to custody pending investigation. I will not be arrested on the word of servants and a woman everyone knows is insane. Lord Aldrich lunged toward the door. Jessamine moved faster. She seized the glass of poisoned wine from the table where Theron had abandoned it and threw the contents directly in Lord Aldrich's face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes, stumbling blindly. Guards seized him before he could recover. That, Jessamine said quietly, was for every night she spent alone in the dark. Theron looked at her with something that might have been awe. I told you, she said. I do not simply stand by. Lady Alowen crossed the room and took her son's hand. Then, with her other hand, she reached for Jessamine. This girl found me when no one else was looking. She fed me when I was starving. She gave me hope when I had forgotten what hope felt like. Her voice carried across the silent ballroom. Whatever honors you bestow upon her will never be enough, but you can start by recognizing her as the hero she is. Jessamine felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in her life, she was not invisible. Lord Aldrich was dragged away, still shouting denials that no one believed. Lady Rowena fled before anyone could question her involvement. And in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by witnesses to the truth, Theron pulled Jessamine close. "It is over," he whispered. "Is it? The hardest part is." He cupped her face in his hands. "Now comes the rest." Hours later, the ball had emptied. Guests had departed in shocked whispers. Servants had begun cleaning the debris of scandal. Lord Aldrich was en route to the magistrates' holding cells, his protests growing weaker with every mile. Jessamine stood on the terrace overlooking Ravencrest's gardens, still wearing the emerald gown, still trying to comprehend everything that had happened. Footsteps behind her. She did not need to turn to know who it was. "You should be celebrating," she said. "I am not much for crowds." Theron moved to stand beside her, looking out at the moonlit grounds. "I never have been. Too many masks, too much pretense. And yet you wear a mask better than anyone I have met. I used to, before you." He turned to face her. "You stripped away every defense I had. Do you know how terrifying that is?" "I have some idea." Silence settled between them, comfortable rather than heavy. "Jessamine." He spoke her name like a prayer. "I need you to understand something. When I first stopped you on that road, I thought you were a problem to be solved. An obstacle in whatever game I assumed was being played. And now? Now I cannot imagine my life without you in it." She shook her head slowly. "I am still a servant, Theron. I own nothing. I am no one. You are the woman who walked into darkness to feed a stranger. The woman who stood in a room full of nobles and did not flinch. The woman who threw poison in a murderer's face without hesitation." He took her hands in his. "You are everything. Society will never accept. Society can burn for all I care." He pulled her closer, his forehead resting against hers. "I have spent my entire life doing what was expected. Following rules written by people who saw me as a title, not a person. You are the first one who ever saw me, just me. Theron, I love you." The words were simple, certain, unadorned. "I did not plan to. I do not think I even wanted to. But I do. And I am finished pretending otherwise." Jessamine felt tears slide down her cheeks. "No one has ever chosen me," she whispered. "My whole life, I have been passed over, overlooked, forgotten. Then let me be the first to choose you, and the last." He kissed her. Not gentle, not tentative, a kiss that claimed and surrendered in equal measure. A kiss that tasted of relief and promise, and everything they had nearly lost. When they finally broke apart, breathless and trembling, she laughed. "The scandal will be magnificent." "Good. Let them talk for the next century." He smiled, the first real smile she had ever seen from him. "Let them tell stories about the Duke who fell in love with a servant girl. Let them say she was worth more than every noble lady in England." Was she? "She was worth more than everything I own." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "She still is." Jessamine leaned into him, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek. She had been invisible her entire life. Now someone finally saw her, and he was never going to look away. 6 months later, the wedding bells of Ravencrest Chapel rang across the countryside. Jessamine stood at the altar in ivory silk, flowers woven through her hair, facing the man who had found her on a dark road and changed everything. Lady Allowan sat in the front pew, healthy and whole, weeping tears of joy. The guests were an unusual mix. Nobles who had accepted the scandal sat beside former servants who had testified against Lord Aldrich. Mrs. Thornley had a seat of honor. Even the keeper who had guarded Lady Allowen's prison had been pardoned in exchange for his testimony, and sat quietly in the back, head bowed. Lord Aldrich had been convicted of murder and conspiracy. He would spend the rest of his life in prison. Lady Rowena had fled to the continent, her reputation destroyed. Justice, imperfect but real. After the ceremony, Jessamine walked through the grounds of Ravencrest, still marveling that this was her home now. She paused at a new building near the estate's edge. A brass plaque gleamed above the entrance. Allowen House, a refuge for the forgotten. You did not have to name it after me, Lady Allowen said, appearing beside her. It was your suffering that inspired it, your strength. Women who have been abandoned, imprisoned, forgotten. They will find safety here. A second chance. Like the chance you gave me. Inside, a dozen women were already settling in, learning skills, healing wounds, becoming visible again. That evening, Theron found Jessamine in the library staring at the fire. I have something for you. He pressed a small velvet box into her hands. Inside lay a simple locket. She opened it to find two miniature portraits. Lady Allowen on one side, Jessamine herself on the other. The two women who saved me, Theron said quietly. One gave me life. The other gave me a reason to live it. Jessamine fastened the locket around her neck, feeling its weight against her heart. I still cannot believe this is real, she admitted. A year ago, I was stealing kitchen scraps to feed a stranger. Now I am a duchess. You were always extraordinary. The title just helps others see it. She turned to face him, this man who had chosen her when no one else would. Every night I walked to that cottage, I was terrified, she said, but I went anyway. Why? Because some things matter more than fear. He wrapped his arms around her, and she leaned into his warmth. You were invisible once, he murmured. Now everyone sees you. I do not need everyone to see me. She looked up at him. Just you. Outside, the sun set over Ravencrest, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Jessamine Holt had spent her life feeding forgotten souls in the darkness, expecting nothing in return. And in return, she had found everything. Thank you for staying with us until the very end. If this story touched something in you, the power of compassion, the courage to act when no one is watching, and the miracle of being truly seen, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling us your favorite moment and where you are listening from. If you are ready for another story where love conquers the impossible, subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the next chapter. You are the reason these stories exist. Thank you for being here.